Hey everyone, and welcome to UK Media Warrior. And today we're going to be looking at Episode 4, Star Trek Discovery, The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry. My God, are we going to Shakespeare now with these titles? I mean, really? Okay, alright, anyway. Episode 4, the show, as I've said over my previous 3 reviews, I'm not a fan of the show. I'm not a fan of how they're ignoring the continuity and the canon of previous 5 decades worth of Star Trek. So I'm going to leave that there, because this episode is my nitpicks about this episode, and admittedly, on my list here that I always have every review, most of them are nitpicks, but they are still things that a decent writer and a decent producer and director would notice and fix. But for some reason, they don't do that in this show. So the existing problems I've got with this show in the form of a Star Trek show are still here, but there's no point going on about them every review, so I'm just not going to bother. Okay, now, The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry. This episode was a bit of a weird one for me. There were points of it that I liked. They tried to push forward. What I'm thinking is they've got this long-term plan, this long story arc that they're trying to get to, that they will pay off down the line. The problem is they're doing it by jeopardizing the first few episodes of a brand new Star Trek show. What they should be doing is focusing on making the first few episodes as good as possible to get people to want to stay with this series. If they want to do long story arcs, that's fine, but don't make them so heavy and so confusing that people just don't know what the hell you're trying to show them in the first few episodes of a new season. If this goes to season 2, perhaps do it then. Hopefully by that time, if you've had a solid good first season, you will have attracted enough viewers that you can get away with doing that and you won't lose anyone. But what you need to be doing for this, especially considering the Star Trek fans are currently up in arms about this series for the most part, you need to get them on board. You need to bring them into this show and make them happy. And CBS just are not doing this. So, okay. Basically, the premise of this show is that Lorca gets Burnham to investigate this huge bug-style creature that attacked them on the Glen last episode. He wants to weaponize it. He wants to find out about these claws that can rip through Klingon armor and hull plating. He wants to know how we can make that into a weapon. But then that's Lorca. He's the stereotypical military guy who's he's like the Ahab with the white whale. You know, it's like he's focused on finishing this war, beating the Klingons, killing them, destroying them. So that's his stereotype. And then we have Lieutenant Stamets down in engineering. He's our stereotypical scientist, engineer. But oddly enough, in the last episode, they made him out to be quite a dick, really. And yet in this episode, he seemed really quite nice. He was quite friendly to Burnham. So I'm not entirely I'm not sure what happened in the intermediate time there between the 2 episodes that we didn't see. But he's gone from giving her a really hard time to actually being quite happy and nice to her. So that was a bit of a weird U-turn. Cadet Tilly, again, I just can't stand that character. As soon as she opens her mouth, I just want her to shut up. She's from a totally different show. She's like from some teen young adult show on some TV series somewhere, that, you know, like a Disney TV series maybe. That's where she feels like she should be. Her character, her bubbly personality, her nervousness just doesn't feel right for what they are trying to put across in this show. She's the only person in the entire cast who's like this. So she stands out like a sore thumb, and it just makes it hard to like her. But then, to be honest, it's hard to like most of any of these characters. I'm intrigued by a few. Lorca, I want to know where he's coming from, what his arc is, why he is the way he is. Burnham's all over the place. One minute she's an emotional wreck trying to start a war. The next minute she's all Vulcan logic, wanting to look at the science of something. Then she's all nice and nurturing with Tilly. And it's like they don't know what to do with this character. They want you to like her, but they also want you to not like her. And so it just throws her in the air, and nobody gives a shit what what happens to her at the moment. I'm more interested in perhaps the characters behind, the B-list characters, the co-starring roles, if you will. As I say, Lorca, but also Stamets. I mean, he's quite an interesting guy. I mean, I'd be interested to see what happens with him. The chief of security who died, who I can't even remember her name, and this is a problem. We have gone through so many crew members in just 4 episodes of a brand new series. We don't know who we're supposed to be caring about. We start off with 2 hours on the Shenzhou, captained by Michelle Yeoh's character, and we think, okay, so great, we've got 2 hours here with these people. We've got Michael Burnham, we've got Michelle Yeoh as the captain, we've got Saru, the science officer who's scared of his own shadow, but we've got all these other crew members on the bridge, and you slowly start recognizing them in the 2-hour pilot. You slowly start to not care perhaps, but have a connection with them, and then they're gone. Just like that. That's it. End of the 2-hour pilot. The only people you get back are Burnham, Saru, the scared science officer, and the woman who pilots the ship, the girl who's on helm, who's got that weird silver thing on the side of her head, who has no lines in last episode or this episode, but she's the only other familiar face we get back from the Shenzhou. So I'm not entirely sure what her part is. Why did they bother bringing her back to put her on the Discovery when they're not giving her any lines and she just sits there looking scared at a view screen most of the time? So that's a bit weird. So we get to the Discovery last episode, and we start seeing new crew members. We've got Stamets, fine. We've got Lorca, perfect. We've got this chief of security lady. And you think, okay, cool, so she's going to be a regular. No, she gets killed off now. What are they doing? Don't they want us to like these people? Don't they want us to start caring about this crew? They keep swapping and changing out characters like it's going out of business or something. I just don't understand this way of introducing a new series. It makes no sense to me. So anyway, my list of, admittedly, some of them, as I say, are nitpicks. Others I find to be quite gaping plot holes. But, this episode, I preferred last episode to this one, to be honest. The last episode had more continuity issues for me. But this episode, it just felt mismanaged. Like they just didn't know what the story was going to be. The Klingons were just wasted. Why they were in it at all, I just don't know. They didn't really bring anything to them. It was like the showrunners just thought, well, okay, we have to keep putting the Klingons in every episode, even if, like in the last episode, we only see a few dead bodies on the ground and one Klingon warrior shushing the away team before he gets killed. But we have to keep putting Klingons in every episode because this is the Federation Klingon War, and we want our viewers to remember that the Klingons are actually the bad guys. So they've got to keep forcing them in every episode somehow. But okay, let's start at the top of this list. Why would Lorca not tell his first officer that he was keeping Michael Burnham on board the ship? We see in this that Saru meets Burnham on the lift and he looks at her surprised and says, aren't you supposed to have been on that prison shuttle that left yesterday? He had no idea she was still aboard the ship. A person who has been court-martialed for mutiny, who should be locked away in the darkest dungeon of Starfleet somewhere, has been brought aboard this ship as part of the crew by the captain, and the captain decides not to tell his first officer this slightly important piece of information. The first officer runs the ship. He keeps everything going smoothly, so the captain can look at the bigger picture, can focus on the important issues. The first officer takes care of the crew and making sure everyone's happy and everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. How's he supposed to do that when the captain's not telling him a slightly important crew member has been brought aboard and he has no knowledge of it? That was just stupid. They only put it in there to provide a little bit of tension between Saru and Burnham. We didn't need it. It was unnecessary. You could have had Saru already knowing about Burnham and you could have still had that tension between them because he doesn't like her. Point 2. The battle drill that we see. As Saru and Burnham walk onto the bridge of the Discovery, there's a battle drill going on, and you see all this flashing red stuff and targeting things flying around the main screen, a holographic main screen. It looked more like a computer game than a battle drill. I've seen better battle drills in other Star Trek series when there was nothing on the screen and all you were focusing on was the crew and their reactions to the orders. And all Lorca was doing was standing up at the front by the screen saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. That's not how a captain orders his crew to act during a battle. You don't stand up in front of the view screen and start giving off a dozen orders, bang, 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 like that, and expect the crew to be able to function in a fluid manner. That doesn't work like that. And this is a captain who's supposed to be militaristic. Go figure. Point 3, the parcel that arrives for Burnham that Tilly takes in for her. A binging parcel that keeps binging until you open the damn thing. How effing annoying is that going to be? I mean, let's just hope Amazon doesn't start doing this, because that would be really piss me off. I mean, it's like your cell phone. If you don't answer your text, it's going to keep binging at you until you look at the damn thing. Now we have parcels that do that. Just imagine if you lost it somewhere. And all you got was this annoying binging every 5 minutes. Like, where the hell's that coming from? I mean, it's a stupid thing. It's like, so this is nothing to do with the show, nothing to do with the continuity, but it was just a stupid little thing that I was kept hearing this binging coming from under a bed, and it was like, for God's sake, that would drive me mad. You're lying on top of this thing. It's like, ugh. We assumed from the last episode that Captain Lorca had gathered these scientists, had drummed them into Starfleet because he needed them for his weapons development program or propulsion experiment program or whatever the hell he's doing. However, in this episode, he seems more annoyed that his ship is full of scientists than he is grateful that he's got all these eggheads around to do his weaponizations or whatever he wants to do. So is he one or the other? Did he recruit all these scientists? Did he drum them all into Starfleet service so he could put them on his ship to do what he wanted them to do? Or was he told to take them all, even though he didn't want to? We're getting two conflicting things here from two different episodes. In one episode, he actually states that he recruited Stamets, that he got him from civilian life onto his ship to work on this drive. And yet in this episode, we see him walking down the corridor complaining to everyone that, all these damn scientists everywhere, getting in my way, not getting what I need to do. It's like, which is it? Why did they abandon the Shenzhou? Why would Starfleet abandon the Shenzhou? At the end of the 2-pilot episode, the ship isn't going to blow up. It's not a derelict. And yet we see all of the escape pods suddenly fly off the Shenzhou, which is a bit surprising for me back then. But here we see that the Klingon ship that they damaged to a point that it couldn't fly anywhere, is almost a derelict, is still there 6 months on. This Klingon ship and the Shenzhou have been floating together in this debris field for 6 months. Why wouldn't the Federation tow the Shenzhou to a shipyard? They're in the middle of a war. They need every ship they can get. And if the Shenzhou is still in one piece, to the point that the Klingons come aboard the ship and steal part of its engine so they can get their ship working, I'm sure it could quite easily be patched up enough to be used by Starfleet. So why didn't they come back? Why didn't they come back to this binary star system where this huge battle took place and find the Shenzhou and take it back to a shipyard? Equally, why didn't they come back and find the Klingon ship and finish it off? You don't have this huge battle and then everyone runs away and nobody comes back. That doesn't make sense. Once you've had a huge battle, you would still send in probes to see what's left over, if there's anything worth salvaging, to at least pick up the bodies. Even the Klingons did that much, where they tried to bring their bodies back aboard ship. So that made no sense to me that the Shenzhou would still be there. And equally, when you see the Klingon Vor come on board the ship, when he is on the ship looking for that engineering part, and you see him in Captain Georgiou's ready room. The place is stripped. There is nothing in that room at all. Where did all of her stuff go? We see Burnham gets her telescope in her will. Who picked up the damn telescope and took it with them on one of those small life pods to escape when the ship was going to, be derelict? I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't have had time when they're abandoning ship to quickly go through everything, grab everyone's personal gear, shove it onto an escape pod, and get away from the ship. Which means, did somebody come back to the Shenzhou to clear away all the personal possessions? Somebody had to, because Burnham gets the telescope that we see. Well, okay, well, if somebody came back to do that, why didn't they notice that hulking great Klingon ship still there with Klingon life signs on board and either destroy it or capture it? These are plot holes in writing that drive me up the effing wall. It's not complicated stuff. You can write a good, solid story for a TV show or a film and not have these huge plot holes that leave people wondering, how the hell did that happen? It just doesn't make sense that they would be so lazy about this sort of thing. It doesn't take more than 5 seconds to fix it, and you would have a solid, smooth story, everything explained, yet they just don't take the time. But equally, why didn't the Klingons come back? Duchovny got all 24 Klingon families together to follow him in the pilot episode. In the pilot 2 hours, he got all the Klingons together to follow him. Fantastic. They all fly back to Kronos to gather their forces for the war. His ship, the only ship left there that's Klingon, gets damaged by the Shenzhou. 6 months down the line, no Klingons have come back to find out where Duchovny disappeared to. We're 6 months into the Klingon War, a Klingon war that Duchovny started, and nobody's come back to find out where he vanished to. 6 months down the line, his ship is still derelict, floating in space, running out of food, and none of the Klingons that were supposed to be his allies that he got banded together behind him, nobody's come back looking for him. And when did Klingons start eating dead bodies? They mention here that they eat Captain Georgiou because her body was left aboard his flagship, Duchovny's flagship. Pretty sure that's never been said before about Klingons, that they actually eat dead bodies, be they enemy bodies or not. I'm pretty sure that's something new that we've never heard of before. This episode depends on an old faithful when it comes to storytelling. The MacGuffin, if you will, that something is happening in space over here. You're the closest ship to it, so you have to go and fix it. We had that in Star Trek The Motion Picture, where the Enterprise was in space dock having a refit, but it was the closest ship. Even though this enemy alien object was coming to Earth, which is the home of the Federation, the Enterprise was in refit in space dock. It was the only ship available to go and meet this dangerous thing that was coming towards Earth. But that was the motion picture. We're not going to get into that here. What I'm saying is it's a plot point that has been used over and over and over again. And it's reused here by the Admiral saying to Lorca, Korvan 2 is under attack by the Klingons. They've wiped out our blockading force. They're attacking the colony. You have 6 hours before the shields fall and the colony is destroyed. And they give us 40% of the dilithium we need to fuel our ships. So you need to get there because you're the closest ship to it. You're the only ship who can get there. Firstly, if this colony gives you 40% of your fuel, shouldn't you perhaps have it better defended? You're in the middle of a war. If you lose 40% of your fuel, then you're pretty much screwed. Just ask Hitler in the Second World War when he ran out of oil, see how his tanks went. So saying, well, no, the Klingons are blasted through our blockading force and now they're laying siege to Korvan 2. I mean, for one thing, those shields around that colony were fucking excellent. To be able to hold out for 6 hours against a full-on Klingon attack force? I mean, if we look at DS9 as some sort of a groundwork here for a Star Trek war story, during the Dominion War on Deep Space Nine, we heard of Dominion raids that took place on planets that took place on whole entire fleets, and all we hear is this fleet was taken out. Betazoid has been captured by the Dominion. And there's nothing anyone can do. They just happen. The enemy fly in, attack, destroy or capture, and that's it. There's no time for anyone to do anything in the way of zooming there in your ship to save the day. And yet in this episode, they have 6 hours because the story requires them to have 6 hours. So these shields are going to manage to last 6 hours, even though it's a civilian facility. But that doesn't negate the fact that Starfleet should have perhaps had a stronger defence force around perhaps one of only 2 or 3 dilithium mining colonies in their entire territory. Just saying. The Discovery and the Glenn were both built at the same time to experiment with this spore drive that Stamets and his friend came up with. Now, obviously, Stamets is on board the Discovery. His friend was on board the Glenn and died. They used to be civilians. They worked in a lab. These starships did not exist until the war began. That's a fact. That's stated. This war has been going on for 6 months. How do they build starships, 2 starships, in 6 months to the level that they can be used as test beds for this experimental propulsion unit? It takes years to build starships. That's a stated fact from the Next Generation and DS9. You can't just pump out starships whenever you need them. They're a little bit more technical than that. You know, you can't just take on and say, okay, the war started, we need these 2 experimental starships because these 2 scientists have this propulsion system we need to experiment with, so we're going to build 2 starships really quickly. 6 months later, everything's fine. They've been on their test runs, all fully manned and crewed. Perfect, let's get going. No, you couldn't do that in 6 months, I'm sorry. The Klingons in this show were, again, pretty much pointless. I really wish they would just get them to speak in English. It takes something, for me at least, it takes something out of it when you have to read the subtitles rather than watching the acting. Now, admittedly, these guys are wearing so much prosthetic makeup, you can't really see much acting going on through all of that rubber and plastic or whatever the hell they've got on their faces. But nonetheless, the eyes can give you some. I have seen actors do some amazing performances where all you can really see is their eyes. So to take that away because your eyes are flicked down to the bottom of the screen to read the subtitles, while the poor guy in the prosthetic makeup is trying to give you a performance, it's disrespectful to him in my eyes anyway, but also there's no real reason for it. You could have them speak in English. It wouldn't really harm anything. Klingons have always spoken English on Star Trek. Yes, they have their own language. Yes, we hear it occasionally. But as a rule, they all speak English because it's easier for the audience to keep attached to the character and understand what's going on. But that's pretty much it for my list. As I say, some nitpicks, some plot holes there I wanted to point out. But as a rule, this show isn't going to do anything to solve my issues with canon and continuity. That is obvious now. So as I said last review, I'm trying to watch this show not as a Star Trek show per se, but as a science fiction show. And as that, it's watchable, it's entertaining. That's fine, I can do that. But if I try and watch it as a Star Trek show, it doesn't work on a lot of angles. So I can't watch the show in that view. However, that's not to say that if down the line they make other continuity screw-ups, I'm not going to mention them in my reviews. I'm just saying that I will try and tone down that and just concentrate on the show itself, what they did well, what they did wrong. Unfortunately, there just hasn't been that much good about the 4 episodes we've seen so far. I'm hoping for more in the future, but for now, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or maybe share it on your Facebook page. But until next time, you guys take care. Thank you so much. Until then, bye for now.